Today's topic is cardiac X-rays. First, we will discuss about normal line diagrams or basics of cardiac X-rays. In this image, it is showing the normal contour of the heart as seen in the AP projection in the chest X-ray. Here we can see the right atrium or right heart border and SVC. And right edge of the lung or right lung border is formed by the upper 2/3 is SVC and lower 1/3 is by right atrium. And here we can see the right pulmonary artery and left pulmonary artery. And this is the main pulmonary trunk. It is, and you can see here the right ventricle, the orientation of the right ventricle, which is posteriorly located. This line diagram is showing the spines and orientation of the left ventricle. Here we can see the two pulmonary veins on the either side are draining into the left atrium. And we can see the left ventricle here. And you can see here the left atrial appendage. And this is a line diagram showing the right atrial enlargement on the left side in the AP view. And we can see here the prominent pulmonary bay. And in the right image, it is showing the right ventricular enlargement. It is on the lateral chest X-ray or lateral view. And here, normally the right ventricle will be anterior and left ventricle will be posteriorly located. And this is the right pulmonary artery and left pulmonary artery. You can see the IVC on the posterior. And this is the sternum, and this is the arch of aorta. This is descending aorta. And here normally there will be the retrocardiac lucency will be there. If this lucency is lost, then there will be the pathology, and assume there is any pathology or any anterior mediastinal mass. And this is the figure showing the left ventricular enlargement. And here we can see the apex is in and out. And that is, in simple words, we can say the apex is below the diaphragm. If it is above the diaphragm, then it is the right ventricular enlargement. And this is the left. In the lateral view, you can see the left ventricular enlargement. And this is the line diagram showing the classic signs of the mitral stenosis. This is playing of carina, left atrial enlargement, and we insert double heart border, and left atrial appendage is straight or prominent. These four signs constitute the mitral stenosis. This is the image. This is a chest radiograph showing the right ventricular enlargement as evidenced by the fact that the apex is above the diaphragm and it is enlarged. You can see the prominent right pulmonary artery and perihilar. We can see the perihilar region opacification is there. And we can see this on the rest of the lung fields are clear. And this is a classical case of atrial septal defect, ostium secundum type. And in other words, we can say that there is the jug-handle sign. And this is the ostium atrial septal defect, ostium secundum type. Now this is another chest X-ray which is zoomed in image showing a figure of 3 sign, which is due to the post-stenotic dilatation. And we can see here, this is the pathology. This is normal aortic arch, and which is giving the appearance of the figure of 3 that is seen in coaptation of aorta. You can see the red arrows. Red arrows is pointing to the figure of 3, and here blue arrow is showing the inferior rib notching. So the figure of 3 plus the inferior rib notching should suspect the coaptation of aorta. And this is a chest X-ray. This is a chest radiograph showing the pulmonary stenosis. As evidenced by the fact that there is a right atrial enlargement, and we can, and according to the history, we can see the pansystolic murmur. And we see the atrial enlargement that leads to the pulmonary stenosis. This is another chest radiograph. In this chest radiograph, the mediastinum, entire mediastinum is shifted to the right, and the abdominal stomach bubble or funded gas bubble is on the left side. On the right side, normally this should present in the left side. So the diagnosis will be situs inversus totalis, since the aortic knuckle is also on the right side. And this is another chest radiograph showing the shift of mediastinum to the right, but aortic knuckle and funded gas bubble are on the left side and the non-normal side. So it is, we can say that it is just a dextrocardia. This is the chest radiograph of an ICU patient showing the opacities in the right upper and perihilar region, right and left upper and perihilar region, suggestive of the pulmonary edema. And it's one of the signs is bat wing edema. And this is another case of the pulmonary edema. This is a frontal chest radiograph showing a mild cardiomegaly with cephalization of the vessels, with peribronchial cuffing, and you can see the numerous lines in the peripheral lung zones, peripheral lung fields, suggestive of the curly B lines, which gives the diagnosis of pulmonary venous hypertension or interstitial edema. And these two images are showing the features of peribronchial cuffing. And this is a frontal chest radiograph showing the straight heart border, spline of carina, and we can see the double density heart border, which gives the suspicion of or left atrial enlargement You see the left ventricular enlargement, mild cardiomegaly. This gives rise suggestive of these features are suggestive of classic mitral stenosis. Yeah, this is a frontal chest radiograph. We can see numerous sternotomy wires. You can see the massive, moderate to severe cardiomegaly. You can see right atrial enlargement, right ventricular enlargement. This gives rise to the features suggestive. The features are suggestive of mitral regurgitation. This is a frontal chest radiograph showing a massive cardiomegaly with lung fields are clear. These features suggestive of the pericardial effusion. Let's see the splaying of the carina also can be seen. And this is a classical case of pericardial effusion. This is a frontal chest radiograph showing the cephalization of vessels, the fluid in the horizontal fissure, calcified aortic knuckle or aortic arch, and large cardiomegaly. This is another example of the pericardial effusion, or there is a sign called leather bottle or bag of water sign. The main feature of the pericardial effusion is it is present in the chest radiograph. The features are massive cardiomegaly with clear lung fields. This is another case of here we can see this is a chest radiograph. Here we can see this volume of right hemithorax is reduced, and there is a massive cardiomegaly with calcification of the aortic arch, and trachea is shifted to the right side. Here the frontal chest radiograph showing a well-defined and well circumscribed opacity in the pericardiac region or retrocardiac region, suggestive of pericardial cyst. This is the lateral chest radiograph showing the calcification in the entire inferior part of the heart or inferior part of the right ventricle. This is a frontal chest radiograph showing the well-defined opacity in the left mid-zone. And this is a lateral radiograph showing the calcification in all over the cardiac contour. And this X-ray is showing the left ventricular aneurysm. And this is a frontal chest radiograph showing the various interstitial markings in both the lung fields and massive cardiomegaly, which gives rise to the features of dilated cardiomyopathy. And next step in the management is do the echo if possible. This is a frontal chest radiograph. You can see this right atrial, this is a frontal chest radiograph showing the dilated ascending aorta, and there is a there's a calcified ascending aorta, and rest of the aortic margins are normal. And this is showing the aortic aneurysm. This is a frontal chest radiograph showing the aortic arch aneurysm, dilated aortic knuckle. This is the same case, dilated aortic knuckle. You can see the massively dilated and ascending aorta is also dilated. This is a massive dilatation of the arch of aorta, descending aorta. And these are some cases. Case 1, a 70-year-old man with the shortness of the breath. Here we can see this chest radiograph showing the aortic aneurysm and pacemaker in situ. The heart size is increased, the aorta and pacemaker is present. And this is a CT of the same patient showing the cardiomegaly. This is the CT image showing CT angio showing the aortic dilatation. Here we can see the aortic dissection we can see here in this CT image. This is the length of the aortic aorta, ascending aorta. Length is 3 centimeters, which is normal, which is abnormal. Aortic the aortic wall leaflets are tricuspid and heavily calcified, particularly the left most posterior and right most superior cusps. Differential diagnosis: congenital valvular disease, chronic degenerative rheumatic disease, prior endocarditis. The proximal aorta is moderately ectatic to 3.9 centimeter. The aneurysm is considered greater than 4.0 centimeter. And there is a left ventricular hypertrophy, which is a common finding in the patients with aortic stenosis due to the elevated systemic resistance after load on the heart. Here, the diagnosis will be degenerative calcific aortic stenosis. Differential diagnosis: bicuspid aortic valve with calcific stenosis, sub or supravalvular aortic stenosis, rheumatic heart disease. So this is aortic stenosis. This is a case of aortic stenosis. Pathology. The aortic stenosis is a thickening or fusion with calcification of the valve leaflets caused by the non-laminar flow, similar to pathogenesis of atherosclerosis with deposition of calcium on leaflets. The calcification dominates near the base of the valve. The fibrous proliferation of the cusps. The most commonly caused by the senile chronic degeneration. As patients age, 25% of patients have aortic valve calcium by the age of 65 years. The most common cause of aortic stenosis younger than age 55 is bicuspid valve morphology. which accelerates abnormal flow mechanics across valve, leading to earlier deposition of calcium and stenosis of the cusps. The 2 to 5% of patients older than age 65 have chronic degenerative aortic stenosis. The 1 to 2% of the general population has bicuspid aortic valve, or called BAV, which is associated with other congenital abnormalities, including familial aortic dissection, Turner syndrome, which account for 30%, which have bicuspid aortic valve, and Williams syndrome, supravalvular aortic stenosis, in which the 11% have bicuspid aortic valve. The assessment of severity of aortic stenosis: mild, moderate, and severe, grade 1 to grade 3 by echocardiography. The mild case, aortic valve orifice area greater than 1.5 centimeter square. The mean pressure gradient is less than 25 mm of mercury. Moderate, the aortic valve area of 1 centimeter square to 1.5 centimeter square. Transvalvular pressure gradient 25 to 40 millimeter of mercury. Severe, AVA or aortic valve area less than 1 centimeter square. Transvalvular pressure gradient greater than 40 millimeter of mercury. Severe or critical, surgery indicated, AVA is less than 0.7 centimeter square. Here's a table given on the basis of severity and mean pressure gradient. Mild will be more than 1.5 centimeter square, in which the mean pressure will be less than 25 millimeter of mercury. Moderate, the aortic valve area will be 1 to 1.5 centimeter square, mean pressure gradient 25 to 40. Severe, the aortic valve area less than 1.0 and mean pressure gradient of more than 40. Critical cases less than 0.7 centimeter square. Imaging features of aortic stenosis: chest X-ray, 2D echo, NECT, CECT, and cardiac MRI, gated NEM, NRI, CE, contrast enhanced MR, Cine-MR. Chest X-ray features, they give cardiomegaly, which is predominantly left ventricular enlargement, grossly dilated aorta, which differential diagnosis is aortic stenosis, aneurysm or calcification, and left ventricular failure. On TD echocardiography, the best overall screening test, calcified, echogenic, and thickened wall cusps, color and spectral Doppler can assess the severity and transvalvular velocity with which to calculate pressure gradient as listed above. The chest X-ray gives prominent aortic arch aneurysm if aortic stenosis is present without cardiomegaly. If cardiomegaly is present, this suggests a component of aortic insufficiency, pulmonary edema if left heart failure is absent. On CT, unenhanced CT shows the calcification on the aortic valve. Enhanced ECG gated CT accurately shows the aortic valve cusps calcification, possible bicuspid valve leaflets, and left ventricular outflow tract, as well as secondary complications such as post-stenotic ascending aortic aneurysm and left ventricular hypertrophy. MRI, Cine-MRI shows stenotic flow jet, potential bivalvular configuration, and degree of coaptation during dynamic imaging. Phase contrast MRI quantifies stenotic jet and extrapolates transvalvular gradient similar to echocardiography. Calculation of left ventricular function morphology, thoracic aorta can be secondarily evaluated for aneurysm. And this is a case 2. History. A 51-year-old man with end-stage renal disease presents with progressive dyspnea on exertion. And this is a frontal chest radiograph showing the various sternotomy wires, showing the cardiomegaly, and loss of pharetic knuckle. And this is the lateral chest X-ray showing calcified inferior border of heart. This patient is likely has secondary hyperparathyroidism. The pericardium is abnormally thickened. In patients with end-stage renal disease, parathyroid hormone levels become elevated secondary to hypophosphatemia and decreased vitamin D levels due to chronic renal failure. This is also known as renal osteodystrophy and may result in the appearance of rugged Jersey spine. That is a hyperphosphatemia. The potential cause for pericardial thickening and calcification. There are 3 DDs like tuberculosis, uremia, and radiation. This is CT showing the calcification here. The left heart border. Findings. PA and lateral views from the chest X-ray. There's a blunting of bilateral costophrenic angles that represent bilateral pleural effusions. The cardiac silhouette is mildly enlarged. The curvilinear densities along the inferior and right cardiac borders representing pericardial calcification. There are median sternotomy wires, multiple surgical clips overlying the chest. There is a prominence of main pulmonary trunk and bilateral pulmonary arteries suggesting pulmonary hypertension. We can see the prominent pulmonary arteries bilaterally. The axial and reformatory coronal images from an unenhanced CT of the chest, soft tissue window, the heart is enlarged. There is extensive calcification along the posterolateral and inferior aspects of the pericardium with thickening of the pericardium. Calcification is noted in the coronary arteries and also on the aortic valve. Yeah, differential diagnosis: constructive pericarditis, uremic infectious, autoimmune, radiation injury, myocardial calcification, pericardial neoplasm. Diagnosis: uremic constructive pericarditis secondary to the end-stage renal disease. The pericardium is composed of an inner visceral layer and an outer parietal layer with a potential space between the 2 layers that is not usually visualized on the radiography or CT. The normal thickness of the pericardium on CT is less than 2 mm. With any inflammation, the pericardium can become thickened, such as in an acute pericarditis. Sequelae of acute insults and chronic inflammation can lead to symptoms of heart failure and constructive pericarditis. The constructive pericarditis has a variety of causes and is most commonly due to radiation or previous cardiac surgery. Infection, usually viral or tuberculous, connective tissue diseases, metabolic derangements, example uremia, and neoplasm may be other causes. Worldwide, the most common cause of pericardial calcification is tuberculosis. However, in the United States, the most common cause is idiopathic, likely post-viral causes. On imaging, an abnormally thickened pericardium more than 4 mm is seen, which may be calcified in up to 50% of the patients. The ventricles may appear tubular, often with flattening of the right ventricular free wall. The other signs of heart failure, such as dilated central veins, ascites, and pleural effusion, may be observed. The patient demonstrates constructive cardiac physiology, which results from decreased ventricular filling that leads to equalization of the diastolic pressures in all 4 cardiac chambers. Since pericardial thickening has many causes, pericardial thickening alone does not equate to the diagnosis of constructive pericarditis. Rather, a combination of both pericardial thickening along with constructive cardiac physiology is necessary to suggest constructive pericarditis. The differentiation between the constructive pericarditis and restrictive cardiomyopathy, which represents with presents with similar cardiac pathophysiology is important because the treatments of the two conditions are very different. The constructive pericarditis may be potentially treated with pericardiectomy, while restrictive cardiomyopathy may be medically treated. Thickened pericardium and a diastolic bounce in the intraventricular septum due to pressure equalization and intraventricular dependence will be observed in the constructive pericarditis and not restrictive cardiomyopathy. Pericardiectomy, typically performed through a median sternotomy, is a potential definitive treatment. However, it is not without high morbidity and mortality. Case 3. A 10-year-old girl with a pre-admission chest radiograph. The patient has history of fever as a young child. This is a chest radiograph of a young patient. Few round-shaped capacities, calcification in the ventricle. Calcified aorta. What are the cardiac features of this disease? Coronary artery aneurysm, coronary artery stenosis, myocarditis. Chest X-ray. There are multiple calcified coronary artery aneurysms. Normal heart size, clear lung fields, cardiac CT, CT angio shows the calcified coronary aneurysms involving the left main coronary artery, left anterior descending coronary artery, and right main coronary artery. Additional aneurysm of the left circumflex coronary artery. Differential diagnosis: Kawasaki disease, systemic lupus erythematosus, polyarteritis nodosa, Takayasu arthritis, septic shock, rheumatic fever, mononucleosis, drug reaction, erythema multiforme, Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Diagnosis is Kawasaki disease. Overview. Kawasaki disease is an acute infantile febrile mucocutaneous lymph node syndrome, acute self-limited multisystemic vasculitis affecting the medium and small arteries, most common in children younger than 5 years old, occurs worldwide but more prevalent in Japan. Etiology is unclear, possible infectious cause in genetically susceptible host, autoimmunity may play a role. Diagnostic criteria: fever lasting for at least 5 days, presence of at least 4 out of 5 of the following should be present: bilateral conjunctival injection, changes of mucosa of oropharynx, including injected pharynx, injected or dry fissured lips, and strawberry tongue, desquamation of the peripheral extremities, diffuse maculopapular rash, primarily truncal cervical lymphadenopathy, illness not explained by other known disease processes. Phases of disease: acute phase, abrupt onset of fever lasts 7 to 14 days. Subacute phase, fever resolves, other symptoms such as desquamation and thrombocytosis occur. This phase lasts for until 4 to 6 weeks. Convalescent stage, complete resolution of the clinical signs within the 3 months of presentation. Cardiac sequelae occur in 15 to 25% of untreated children with the disease, including the following: coronary artery dilatation, premature atherosclerosis and stenosis, and thrombosis, occlusion with myocardial infarction. Imaging: chest radiograph are usually normal. CT angiography demonstrates aneurysm, stenosis, calcification, MRI edema secondary to myocarditis. Case 4. 10-year-old female with hypertension. This is echocardiography showing the pulsus parvus at tardus flow. You can see the enlarged aorta, arch. Tardus parvus waveform is seen in both renal arteries, and non-pulsatile flow is demonstrated in the abdominal aorta. TARD is referred to the slowed systolic acceleration with consequent increase in time to reach systolic peak. Parvus means the systolic peak is low in height, indicating slowed velocity. Doppler evaluation of abdominal aorta shows a dampened Doppler waveform. The sagittal T1 black blood MR image shows the coarctation of descending thoracic aorta, green circle. We can see the coarctation of aorta. Coarctation of aorta. Hypertension may be only sign of undiagnosed aortic coarctation, which may result in evaluation for renal artery stenosis as a reversible cause. A Tardas Parvus Doppler waveform in the abdominal aorta and its branches suggests the diagnosis of coarctation of aorta. Coarctation of aorta is a congenital narrowing of aorta that usually occurs near the site of insertion of the ductus arteriosus. The traditional calcification into preductal, infantile, and postductal adult types is now regarded as too simplistic because of many patients with preductal lesions remain asymptomatic until adulthood. The aortic coarctation has an incidence of 0.2 to 0.6 per 100 live births and accounts for 5 to 8% of all cases of congenital heart disease. Coarctation occurs 2 to 5 times more commonly in males, and there is a high degree of association with gonadal dysgenesis like Turner syndrome and bicuspid aortic wall. Other common associated anomalies include ventricular septal defect and mitral stenosis or regurgitation. The most infants and children with isolated coarctation are asymptomatic, with the findings of reduced femoral pulses, a murmur, and or hypertension being detected during routine medical care in the patient. Since hypertension may be only sign of aortic coarctation, many patients there may be referred for renal Doppler sonography to rule out renal artery stenosis as a curable cause for hypertension. Normally, the Doppler waveform changes along the course of the abdominal aorta. There is a continuous forward diastolic flow in the proximal abdominal aorta, whereas there is a flow reversal during the early diastole downstream from the origin of its major branches, like celiac, superior mesenteric, and renal arteries. The normal Doppler waveform of the main segmental renal arteries demonstrates a rapid systolic rise and a continuous high velocity flow throughout the diastole. The finding of Tardas Parvus pulse waveform in both renal arteries suggests a bilateral renal artery stenosis, which may be ruled out when the same pattern is found in the proximal renal arteries and the abdominal aorta. When dampened waveforms are found in the aorta and its branching vessels, stenosis of the aortic proximal is suggested, and further evaluation should ensure to identify the cause of stenosis. The additional signs of coarctation can be found on chest radiograph and echocardiography, prompting the use of other imaging techniques like CT, MRI, and angiography that will confirm the coarctation. Isolated aortic stenosis can be seen in the coarctation of aorta, mid-aortic dysplastic syndrome, Takayasu arthritis, and valvular aortic stenosis. Simultaneous renal artery and aortic stenosis can be seen in fibrodysplasia, neurofibromatosis, tuberous sclerosis, and mid-aortic dysplastic syndrome. This is the abdominal aorta Doppler. The Doppler waveform of abdominal aorta varies depending on whether the flow is cranially or below the renal arteries. In the former case, there is an appreciable diastolic component as occurs in the areas of low resistance. Downstream, there is no diastolic component, and the trace is characterized with small inverted wave districts with the high resistance. This is another waveform of abdominal aorta. This is a normal waveform, and normal waveform obtained from the renal artery demonstrates the rapid upstroke in the systole and the low resistance waveform with continuous forward flow throughout the cardiac cycle. The normal peak velocity of main renal artery is less than 150 centimeter per second. The resistivity index or RI is less than 0.70. The RI is a ratio of peak systolic to the end diastolic velocity. This is the right renal artery Doppler. And this is a chest radiograph showing the figure of 3 appearance and inferior rib notching suggestive of coarctation of aorta. And see the arrows, red arrows are showing the inferior rib notching, and the yellow, blue, and green arrows are showing the figure of 3. The yellow and blue arrows are showing post-stenotic dilatation, and green arrow is showing normal aorta. This is a 3 sign. Figure of 3 sign. It is caused by in order either a dilated aortic knob or tuck of coact itself, and a post-stenotic dilatation occurs in 1/3 to 1/2 of the patient with coarctation, matched by the reverse 3 or E on barium-filled esophagus. Rib notching. It is a single best sign. The older the person, more likely to have rib notching. Majority have it over 20 years of the age. Rib notching occurs in high pressure circuit. Most often involves the 4th and 8th rib. Sometimes may involve the 3rd and 9th, and does not involve the 1st and 2nd ribs. Intercostals come off coastal cervical trunk, do not supply the collateral flow to the descending aorta. The 4th and 8th do not anastomose with the internal mammary to form collaterals for the descending aorta. Rib notching unilateral. Isolated right-sided rib notching occurs when LSCA is involved in actual coarctation. Isolated left-sided notching can occur if there is an aberrant right subclavian artery which arises from below the coarct segment. And we can see here that we can see this. This is showing the ductus arteriosus, postductal coarctation, and descending aorta. And this is an extensive preductal coarctation. This is postductal and this is preductal. Thank you.